This video is going to get me excommunicated from the agency industry because as a lawyer, I know all the secrets that agencies are using to show success on the campaigns, but in reality, they kind of know that you don't know what you're looking at, so they tell you things to make it look like a success, but in reality, the campaign is going down, you're spending more money, they're buying more time, they're getting paid, but ultimately you're not. So in this video, brought in my partner today, Cesar. We're going to talk about KPIs, key performance indicators that your law firm should be using to hold your agency, your marketing dollars, and your marketing team accountable. Come on over here, Cesar. This slide says why your law firm is burning money. And like I just kind of alluded to, we talk to a lot of lawyers on a daily basis. We talk to them about their data, we ask them about it. And a lot of the times, they're not really sure what they're looking at or how they're looking at and what they should be looking at. So today we're going to talk about KPIs. So talk to me, Cesar. What is a KPI and why is it so important?
Well, first let's talk about what it stands for. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. And the reason why it's important is because you need to have something that you're measuring against. It's like keeping score. You wouldn't watch a football game and not know what the score is. So KPIs tell you, are you winning? Are you losing? Are you doing better than last year, than last month? It's important to have it as a measuring tool. And then it's also important to understand what KPIs you want to measure, which is something we'll talk about a little bit more.
So what about targets, Cesar? Because it's one thing to just set a goal, right? Like you want more phone calls, great. But like, what does a target do within the scope of a KPI to help them be a little bit more surgical?
So targets gets everyone on the same page. If you're looking at your previous historical data and say, hey, typically for the month of November, I get 20 phone calls. So you have a baseline and now you can establish what the target for, let's say this year is, or you can do it from 1 month to the next. Ideally, you want to increase that. So every month your target should be an exceeding growth month over month, year over year.
Yeah, I mean, targets to me are extremely important too because they give you something to measure against, right? It's one thing, like I said, to be like, hey, the KPI is phone calls, right? Or, new leads per month. But how many should you be getting? Because that's really the number that you want to measure and really hold accountable. When we talk about working with agencies or spending a lot of money like a lot of these law firms do, accountability is key, right? Because that target gives you a number that you can measure against month over month, time over time to make sure that you're hitting the numbers that you need in order to grow. Now, that number can be hard to hit, like you said at first, because if you're doing this for the first time, you might not know, like how many phone calls should you be getting? If you're spending money on paid search, what should be that cost per phone call per se? But I think the most important thing is one, if you work with us, we'll tell you because we have so much experience doing this, but two, pick a number based on your past data, pick a number and then continuously optimize, measure against it. And that number's fluid, right? It doesn't have to be the same thing every single month.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, which is having a realistic number. The way you have that is having industry analysis, knowing other law firms, my size, my area, what's realistic, because sometimes that's something that attorneys don't know is realistically what should I be expecting, and it could be unreasonably high or ridiculously low. So that's a good point.
So let's talk about what KPIs law firms should measure. Let's start here under the scope of SEO. So we're gonna talk specifically about search marketing today. There's all sorts of things you could and probably should be doing. There's Meta, there's YouTube, there's social, we're gonna stick to search marketing today because there's 4 pillars within search: SEO, local SEO, PPC, and LSAs that you can build a multi-million-dollar practice off alone. So let's start there. So Cesar, what KPIs within SEO should a law firm be measuring? We'll play a little game here. I actually came up with some of my own. Cesar's gonna list them off Jeopardy style. I'll reveal them as he goes through to see if we're on the same page here. So let's start with SEO.
All right, so let's start with SEO. The obvious is traffic. And there you go. It's the first one. Rankings, engagement. Now we're talking, okay. So as far as what goes underneath that traffic. So once you get the traffic to the website, now you want to measure engagement, how users are actually interacting with your content, and having an understanding that there's different types of pages and each page has a different objective. For example, a blog post, it's more of an informational type of page. So things you may want to measure there is how much time are users spending on the page? Are they scrolling down? How much of the content are they seeing? If you have a video, are they engaging with the video? That kind of thing. A practice area page, like your car accident page, your truck accident page, that has more of a sales objective. Yes, you want to inform users, but now what you're measuring is, are users clicking on your calls to action? Are they, clicking on the click to call button? Are they clicking on your form? You need to understand like the differences, the objective between pages so you can measure engagement. Next thing is, of course, conversions. So again, depending on the type of page, the objective is going to be different. We just talked about a practice area page. The ultimate objective and what's considered a conversion is if somebody actually calls you, fills out a form, or engages with your chat. Okay, so now we're on rankings. Obviously, this is important. You need to have a good understanding of what keywords are important for the pages that you're creating the content for. And then you want to measure those rankings. So have a baseline of where you're at today. And then over time, the thing with rankings is that they typically don't change overnight. So this is not something that you want to be looking at on a daily basis. But every month you should be taking a look at, okay, last month I was ranking in position 20 for a keyword. This month I'm ranking in position 15 or position 10. So you just want to make sure that you're seeing that increase, that improvement month over month with rankings.
And just a note on that too, with rankings specifically, this is why targets are so important, because rankings, it's kind of like, I call it dangling the carrot, right? Like if you're trying to get a horse or a farm animal to do something, you dangle the carrot to get it to take a step for that, right? So within SEO, there's a process to get to conversions, right? There's first rankings, then comes traffic, then comes engagement, and then comes conversion. So I kind of have these four out of order a little bit, but you kind of get the point. And it's important that you have targets for these, because a first place ranking for a certain keyword does not necessarily guarantee any sort of traffic because of what's happening with all sorts of AI. And it also certainly doesn't guarantee any sort of conversion. Something that I hear so much in my sales conversations when I do these audits, I see traffic and I see good rankings, but the prospect is like, I'm not getting any phone calls. I don't know if they're lying to me or whatnot.
Yeah.
So this is why this stuff is so important too, because there's so many different ways to massage the data. Like I like to say, as agencies, like we know what we're doing. We just went through an election. I watched this amazing video that talked about how it's so easy to manipulate data and graph and charts just based on zooming in on certain things, right? And agencies do that too. They'll be like, yo, like I'm showing you this traffic, your traffic graph going up. But if you don't have the right KPIs and targets set on that, like if you're not holding them accountable for phone calls, you're not going to get phone calls, right? So let's talk about local SEO next. Sign cases, of course, we both missed this one. This is obviously the most important thing. We'll talk about sign cases at the end though, because it's not as easy to just track sign cases. There's another process we have to talk about, but we'll close with that. So let's talk about local SEO. Cesar, what do you got here? What are some KPIs they should be looking at?
Okay, called. Well, we're talking about the Google business profile here. So yeah, this is unlike the website. People aren't going to really scroll around and do too much poking around the Google business profile. It's good to optimize it. It's good to have, a bunch of pictures on there and everything. That's good for the optimization, but people are not going to sit around going through your pictures, just so you know. Usually what they're going to do is read the reviews. And that's why reviews are really important, not just for Google's algorithm, but also for people that are finding your Google business profile. They will read the reviews and make sure that, people are getting a positive experience interacting with your business. Ideally, the next step from there is that they're going to call you directly from the Google business profile. So next thing will be clicks. So from the Google business profile, you do have a link to the website. Sometimes people will want to click over to your website just to check you out, see what you're all about, and then they may go ahead and call you from the website versus the Google business profile. Reviews are, again, really, really important. You should have a systematic process for getting reviews, which is something that we help our clients with all the time.
It's a critical ranking factor within the local algorithm specifically. And all of these things here, Google business profile tracks inherently. So it's very, very easy to see.
That's true.
Calls, clicks, reviews. It doesn't track rankings. You'll need a separate rank tracking system for that. But all these things are just very easy to pipe into a report and then measure against month over month. What else you got?
I got to say it's rankings. The next thing you just mentioned it. Yeah. And like you say, Google doesn't inherently track rankings, so it is a separate software that's needed to do that, but it's very easy to do.
And of course, sign cases. But like I said, we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's move over to LSAs here, Cesar. What are some KPIs that a lawyer should be tracking when it comes to LSAs?
First thing is going to be calls. That's the same as the local SEO. The local service ads, they're going to sit above the Google business profile, the local listings. So ideally, these calls are gold, because in most cases, you're the first person they're calling from the local service ads. So just a side note there, that these calls are really important, that you have good intake for, and that you can service these calls right away. I'm going to say clicks. Cost per lead. That is something you get from the dashboard inside of local service ads. So, it's basically how much is it costing you every time somebody calls you. Now, the good thing with local service ads is that it's not cost per click, it's cost per lead. So Google will tell you if they're charging you for this phone call, and it has to meet the criteria of how long were they on the call, whether or not you answered the call, whether or not it falls within the services that you've described that you take. So that's the advantage here over the traditional Google ads, is that here you're just paying for the lead, not for the click.
And just a note on that too, right? Like, you notice over here, there's no cost per metric. Cost per metric is obviously going to be the strongest metric that we can go after, but that's really only going to be available in paid platforms. Now, of course, you can aggregate your total spend on SEO for the agency, for content, for anything that's being developed here, and then do a cost per, which I do suggest that you do for that too. It's just a bit of a muddier tracking system, and it's also not necessarily the most accurate because of all the things that go into an SEO campaign. It's really more like tracking a billboard, right? You're spending $10,000 a month. At least here you can track the outcome you're getting from a billboard. You're kind of just hoping and praying, in a sense. But with LSA, this is tracked directly it's a front end metric track. It's literally what runs your targets, your KPIs here. So just that. Anything else on LSAs? I think there's one more here.
Cost per case.
Again, that was a bit of a trick because, like I said, once we get into signed cases, I'll just kind of preview it here now. You need a CRM, right? Like these things from a pure marketing point of view, right? We're a marketing company. We do a lot of intake coaching consulting. We do a ton of CRM implementations and optimization and stuff like that too, because inherently this is the most important metric that our clients need to track. So we'll help them to do that. But this is also difficult for us to influence as an agency because this is about your intake. We can drive 1 million phone calls. We can drive 1 million phone calls here at $5 each. But if your intake is not picking up the phone, if they don't have the right systems, they're not closing, this cost per case metric can be all over the place. But ultimately, these are the most important metrics. This is why we're here. But from a marketing point of view, we have to understand the relationship between marketing and intake. And all these things are really marketing. Cost per signed case is really kind of the marriage of the two. Last one here, PPC, when it comes to search marketing. What do you got, Cesar?
Well, again, we're going calls for the first one. It's probably going to mirror some of the LSA stuff. Cost per lead, cost per case,
It's exactly. I mean, the main difference here, LSA, is this is a cost per call platform. This is a cost per click platform. So the targets are going to be very different, right? Like within PPC, if you look at a client dashboard, we're tracking cost per click. This is very straightforward. LSA, if you look at a client dashboard, it's total number of calls, total cost per calls, signed cases, cost per signed case. Very, very simple. Don't need to overcomplicate it. PPC, there's a lot more that goes into it. So we're looking at cost per click. We're looking at conversion rate of the landing page. We're looking at cost per conversion. It's a much more in-depth process. Now, PPC can get much more granular and surgical with it. That's also one of the differences. So that's it. That's everything that we got on measuring, tracking KPIs. Again, this is a very important part of the process. It seems very basic and rudimentary. It seems like maybe you're taking a half a step back. You probably already know a lot of this information, but I can't stress how important it is to go through the documentation of this. You should have a tracking plan. You should have an analytics measurement plan, because otherwise, if you're hiring agencies, if you're hiring people in-house, if you're spending money on advertising, how do you measure the effectiveness of it? How do you hold people accountable for the spend? How do you hold the business accountable for growth if you're just kind of spending $1 million a year and making $2 million? You don't know where that money's going. And when we talk about operating and winning in competitive markets like the legal space, The money is made in the details. The money is made in the very granular testing and tracking, because when everyone's doing the same thing, like I know you know about all these different things up here. These are not new campaigns, not new tactics. You probably tried them and done them, but I'm also willing to wager that you probably failed at them or not had the success that you want because you're not measuring it properly. So if you need help with this, Cesar and I are standing by. There's a link below this video. Schedule a call with us and we'll talk about your data, we'll talk about your tracking, we'll talk about your campaigns, and we'll build your roadmap for how to improve it. So if you're interested, hit the link below. If not, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Hey, Ryan here. Hope you liked that video. If you want more, check out these two videos right here on the screen.